Hey guys, welcome back, or is the first time here, welcome. I really hope you enjoyed today's video as well as my channel. Do not forget to hit that subscribe button down below if you do. So today's video is going to be all about single eyeshadows. I basically put together a palette of 20 of my most essential single eyeshadows. I really want to create something that can take you from day to night, that's really versatile and that you could really use to create basically any look with. Keep in mind that it's not necessary if you are building like a makeup collection to get every single one of these single eyeshadows. If you want to, great, but if you don't want to and you sort of just want to pick out a few that you think you'll use the most and build from there, I think that is a fantastic idea. This is really just meant to give you an idea of where to start. Do not forget to let me know in the comments what you thought. Let me know some of your favorite single eyeshadows. Give this video a big thumbs up, and of course subscribe if you're not subscribed already. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm just gonna quickly breeze over the little magnetic palette that I like to use to store my single eyeshadows. Now, I used to use Z palettes, but I've recently switched to the Makeup Forever magnetic palettes just because I do feel like they are a little bit more on the sturdier side. Almost all of my Z palettes have just been destroyed over time, and I do find that the Makeup Forever palettes are really sturdy, and especially when traveling, I feel like there's a lot less chance that anything's gonna happen to your precious little eyeshadows. I also find that you can store a lot more eyeshadows in the Makeup Forever palettes, especially the larger ones. This is one of the larger ones, but they do obviously have some smaller sizes depending on your needs. So here's the overview of what the single eyeshadow palette looks like. Now, I basically separated the eyeshadows into 3 different categories. The first category is the bottom row over here, and this is what I like to call my staples. These are the shades that I basically use for almost every single eye look. So the second category that I have over here is the second row, and this is what I like to call the lid shades. It's pretty self-explanatory. All of these are metallic and beautiful, and I chose a variety of different shades. And then the last category is red on top, and this is what I like to call my builder shades. And these are the shades that I use to basically build on my eye look. So these are like my crease shades, my outer corner shades, my deepeners. So that is a little overview of the palette. So now let's jump into them shade by shade. So starting off with probably one of the most basic single eyeshadows that I think is a must-have to have in a collection, and that is a matte cream shade. Now, you may think to yourself, Jamie, I'm not gonna buy just a single eyeshadow that's a matte cream. It's sort of worthless and pointless. And I do agree with that, because matte cream shades are definitely not the most exciting eyeshadows to purchase, but they are definitely really necessary for almost every single eye look. I use matte cream shades to set my whole entire lid after I apply my primer. I love using a shade like this to highlight my inner corner and my brow bone if I want more of a matte highlight. Now, my personal favorite matte cream shade is Blanc Type from MAC. Now, the reason why Blanc Type from MAC is my favorite matte cream shade is because it is a really nice brightening shade. You could see it's very, very close to white, but it's not a stark bright white. Stark whites are also really nice to have in a collection, but I do find that having something that's a little bit softer is definitely a little bit more wearable and a little bit more versatile. And even though this is a matte cream, pigmentation is still really important. You can see with one swipe, I'm able to get like full opacity, and that also doesn't lean like too pink or too yellow. It is quite neutral. So that is Blanc Type from MAC, and that is definitely the first shade that I would recommend. So the next shade that I think is pretty essential to have is a highlight shade. Now, I actually included 2 different highlight shades because they are quite different. I included one that was a little bit brighter, a little bit more intense and frosty, and then I included another one that's definitely a little bit more on the softer side. So the brighter, more intense shade is Floof from MAC. So this is really great if you want to add a really nice and intense pop to that inner corner brow bone, even on the lid. This is absolutely gorgeous. And if you are more on the fairer side, this could actually work really, really nicely as a cheek highlighter. I think having a really brightening shade in a palette is really important because it is pretty versatile. You could use it when you're doing really, really smoky looks to help open up the eyes, or you could wear it on just like a no makeup day, just like swipe it across the lid and call it a day. Another one of my favorite highlighting shades is Makeup Geek Rapunzel. Now, this is definitely a lot softer, especially when compared to Floof. You could see when compared side by side that Rapunzel has a bit more of like a yellowy and warmer undertone. So this is definitely a little bit softer. It's also not quite as intense as far as like the brightness goes. It definitely gives you that pop, it gives you that highlighted look, but it's on the softer side. So next, moving on to a classic. This is Makeup Geek Peach Smoothie. If you have been around in the YouTube beauty community for a while, there's no doubt that you have heard about this eyeshadow. It is a very popular eyeshadow because it just works so well. It's just a soft, matte, light peach shade, and this color works really well as a transition shade. I do love this shade because it sort of adds like a really beautiful, soft, warm halo glow around the eye, and it really does help eyeshadows just blend out so perfectly. Transition shades just help you get that very seamless blend, and Peach Smoothie is a really, really great one. Another basic that I think is definitely a must-have in a collection is Anastasia Fawn. Now, I was sort of going in between this as well as Latte from Makeup Geek. That's another very similar color. If you don't want to spend the extra bucks on the Anastasia shade, Latte is a really great alternative, although I do feel like Fawn just is a little bit more neutral compared to Latte, which is why I do prefer it. So this is basically just a neutral matte brown. I think having a shade like this in collection is so important just because I feel like it is the basis of a lot of different eye looks. It's also the perfect tone. It's not too dark, it's not too light. So the last staple that I think is really important to have in a makeup collection is of course a matte black. This one in particular is Corrupt from Makeup Geek, and it is definitely my favorite matte black that I have in my collection. It's really nice and deep and dark. It blends fairly easily, and it's just really, really rich. You can use it by itself on the outer corner of the eye to deepen up any eye look. You could use it as an eyeliner. You could also mix it into other shades to darken them a little bit, but it is really nice to have to just sort of have that versatility. So that is it for the staples categories. So now let's move on to the second category, which are the lid shades. So the first shade that I think is really important to have as like a staple lid shade is definitely a gold, and golds really do vary quite a bit from brand to brand and shade to shade. So it really is just important to pick what you prefer. Now for me personally, I do like more of a neutral gold. So MAC Amber Lights is definitely my favorite. This is a really beautifully creamy, intensely pigmented, rich gold shade. I love this because, like I said, it doesn't lean too yellow. It really does look like almost liquid gold on your lids. And I have tried many, many different golds, but I always go back to this one. It's like an oldie, but it's a goodie, and that is why I recommend it. Next, I have a champagne shade. Now, champagne is probably one of my most used eyeshadow shades. I love champagne eyeshadows to just pop all over the lid. I think they're probably some of like the easiest eyeshadows to wear, especially for every day when I'm feeling and looking a little bit tired. Whenever I apply just like a shimmery champagne shade all over my lid, it instantly like brightens up my eyes and adds that little bit of sparkle without it being too intense or too richly pigmented in color, because it's not like a gold. So this one over here called Peach Sorbet from Anastasia is definitely one of my favorites. It is quite reflective, and what I really like about this champagne shade in particular is that it does have those very slight like peachy undertones to it, which I feel like is very flattering. It's not too yellow. Makeup Geek does have a very similar color. I completely forgot what it's called. It was one of my favorites until I broke it, so I haven't used it in a really long time unfortunately, but it is very similar to this shade. So if you're looking for an alternative, I will link that down below. Another shade that's really beautiful to have in your collection is more of like a cool tone pink. This sort of does the exact same things that the champagne shade does, where it like brightens up and just sort of makes your eyes look a little bit more alive. And this one is in the shade Starry Eyed from Makeup Geek. This is another one of my favorite shades to just pop all over my lid with like almost nothing else. And like I said, this is more of like a cool tone pink, so it just has a little bit of a different vibe from the champagne shade depending on your mood. So the next shade that I have over here is Metal from Anastasia, and this is probably one of my favorite silver shades like ever. I do find silver to be a little bit difficult to wear just on myself. I don't really love a very cool tone blue based silver shade. I just find it a little bit less wearable, but this silver is perfect because it's a little bit more neutral. This is probably one of my favorite shades to pop like in the center of my lid on top of any matte eye look, just because it adds almost like a glossy finish to your look because it is so metallic and intense. So if you're looking for a really awesome, just neutral silver shade, Metal from Anastasia is like the best one ever. So next on the list is a bronzy shade. Now I do feel like bronzy shades are probably some of the most wearable, like more smokier lid shades to wear. I feel like everybody could pull off a beautiful bronze. So this one from MAC called Mulch is definitely my favorite. Mulch does have more of like a metallic to it. It does have a little bit more of a sheen, but it's definitely not quite as intense as like the Makeup Geek fold eyeshadows. It's way more wearable and way more subdued, which is why I do really like it. But then again, it still has that beautiful sheen, which catches the light just beautifully and adds that little bit of like an extra sparkle to your eye. Next is probably one of my all-time favorite eyeshadows like ever. This is Mesmerized from Makeup Geek, another one of the foiled eyeshadows. Obviously, you can tell that I really, really enjoy the foiled eyeshadow collection. I do think that they are like spot on. So this is more of like a purpley taupe shade. I think that the shade is just gorgeous if you want to have like a little bit of a different twist to like your smoky eye, because it does have more of that purpley undertone, and also because of that purpley undertone, it will make every single eye color pop. Purple, as you guys may or may not know, is really complementary towards brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. It just contrasts so beautifully with all eye colors and makes them just really stand out. But then again, it's not like in your face purple. It still is very, very wearable, just has that very, very subtle undertone. Now, I definitely wanted to mention a few ColourPop shades because they are so good. They really are very affordable, and the quality of the eyeshadows are sort of mind-blowing, especially considering the price. The mattes blend beautifully, and the metallics are also very, very intense and buttery and pigmented. And this one called Goody Two Shoes is a really beautiful, just very intense gunmetal shade. This is a great shade to like layer on top of black if you want a really like grungy smoky eye. And I love that it has this like blue steel undertone to it. I think it's really just like a sexy color. I know I said I didn't like more of like a blue undertone with silver shades, but once it gets to like that gunmetal tone, it's everything. So somehow I totally lost the footage where I was talking about this gorgeous copper shade called Henna from Anastasia, and I wanted to mention this one as well for the palette because I do think that copper, similar to purple, really does make a lot of eye colors pop, and the formula for this particular shadow is sort of mind-blowing. In one swipe you get full-on intensity, and you really don't even need to use like Fix Plus or any type of help to make this eyeshadow really pop. It really just pops on its own, which is why I love it. All right, so now we're moving on to the last category, and like I said, this is what I like to call my builder shades because these are all of my matte shades. So these are the shades that I like to use to build up an eyeshadow look. So whether that's putting them in the crease, on the outer corner, honestly, I even love putting matte shades all over my lid. Matte shades I think are probably the most versatile of eyeshadow shades just because they could really be used all over the eye. So this is the shade Take the Lead, and this is a very, very cool toned, almost like gray brown shade, and I wanted to recommend this because I think this is a really great builder shade, especially when you are wearing more of a cool toned eye look. It still has those like subtle hints of brown in there, which really helps to sort of ground the color and make it very versatile with a lot of different eyeshadows. For example, pairing this shade with Mesmerized from Makeup Geek is like the perfect combination. Great with the gunmetal shade, really, really beautiful. It's cool because it almost like transforms in a way when you put it next to different shades. So still staying in the realm of cool tones, Smoke from Anastasia is definitely one of my favorite, like all-time favorite cool toned matte browns. What I love about the shade is just how rich it is. And because this doesn't lean too cool toned, it will also complement warmer shades as well, which I really like. And I just love how deep and dark this is without it being black. I think having a really, really deep dark brown in your collection is also really key because sometimes you don't want to use a black to deepen up your eye look. You want to use more of a dark brown to keep it on the softer side, and this is a really, really great option. The next brown that I have over here is Mocha from Makeup Geek. Now you may be looking at all these browns, by the way, and thinking to yourself, they all look the same, but when you actually put them side by side, they are actually fairly different. And I did really keep that in mind. I didn't want to put together brown eyeshadows that were too similar. I really tried to pick out those brown eyeshadows that could be used in different ways so that it wasn't repetitive. So Mocha from Makeup Geek is one of my favorite shades as well because it doesn't lean too warm or too cool. I feel like this is probably one of the most perfect, just like neutral, deeper brown shades. And this again is just really great to use to deepen up an eye look or even pop in the crease. And this can be used for both cool toned and warm toned eyeshadow looks. Now moving a bit on the lighter side of the brown spectrum, this one over here is COCOA BÉAR from Makeup Geek. Now there are a lot of different eyeshadows from many different brands that are very similar to this. I wanted to mention one from Makeup Geek because it is very affordable, but of course Anastasia does have a very similar shade called Sienna. So the eyeshadow is, as you can see, quite a warm brown, and this is just so beautiful to put in the crease, on the outer corner, all over the lid. It's just a really great, again, a very versatile eyeshadow that I think is a must-have in the collection. Now the next shade is Anastasia Fudge. Now this is probably my all-time favorite brown eyeshadow. If I had to pick one eyeshadow to use for the rest of my life, it would definitely be this one because it is just perfect. It's a really gorgeous, fudgy, brown shade. It's like the best way to describe it. When you look at it, you really just see fudge. I love it because it's really nice and warm, but it's also not too red. So you can see when I compare it to like COCOA BÉAR definitely has more of like those red undertones, and I really just love how rich the shade is. It just adds like such like an expensive quality to an eyeshadow makeup look. I know that sounds so weird, but I feel like you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just like delicious. I have 3 more shades to talk about, and they're more on like the purpley side, just because I feel like purple is a shade that a lot of people gravitate towards when they want to add just a little bit of color to the look, because I do feel like the right shade of purple can still be a neutral, so it is quite wearable. And like I said, purple does make many eye colors pop, so I think it is really great universally. First shade that I want to recommend is this one from Makeup Geek called Americano. This is another more brown shade, but this has more of like that purple undertone to it, which just is so pretty, especially paired with other purple shades. I just want to show you guys what this looks like next to Mesmerized. Like, look how gorgeous that color combo is. Even putting it next to more of like a neutral brown shade like Mulch is still really, really pretty. The next purpley shade that I wanted to mention is another one from Makeup Geek, and this one is Cherry Cola. So Cherry Cola definitely leans a little bit more plum. The reason why I wanted to choose this shade in particular is because I do feel like it is quite a wearable purple shade. It's not super bright or in your face, and it doesn't scream purple, but it will still add just a little bit of color to your eye look as well, while still being very, very wearable. And the last eyeshadow that I have here is Stay Golden from ColourPop, and this is definitely probably the most like different shade that I've included in today's palette. I really think that even though this is a little bit more on the different side, I still think it is quite wearable and very versatile to use. This can be used in more purpley eyeshadow looks. You could also wear this in more brown eyeshadow looks, and it's just a really fun shade that I think works well with the rest of the palette. Like, you could combine it in so many different ways. So that is actually it for all the eyeshadows in the eyeshadow palette. There are like endless combinations that you could put together to create anything from daytime looks to nighttime looks to basically everything in between. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Do not forget to let me know what you thought in the comments. If you end up picking up any of these eyeshadows, send me a picture on like Twitter or Snapchat or Instagram. I would love to see your little palettes created. I think it would be really fun to check out. Of course, give this video a big thumbs up if you'd like to see more, and subscribe if you are not subscribed already. So that's it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.